The Epic of Gilgamesh, the timeless quest for immortality written and published by Lord Kabura's Magic Haven. Let's take a journey back in time, thousands of years, to ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, where one of the oldest pieces of human literature was born, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This ancient story is not just a tale of kings and gods, but of the human struggle to accept mortality, the bonds of friendship, and the desire for something more, something eternal. Introduction. Written on clay tablets in the ancient language of Akkadian, the Epic of Gilgamesh gives us a window into the beliefs, fears, and hopes of the Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations. The story begins in the city of Uruk, a place of great power and wealth. At its center stands Gilgamesh, the mighty king, part god and part human, known for his unmatched strength and wisdom, but also his cruelty. The epic touches on themes that we still wrestle with today: our fear of death, the meaning of life, and what it means to leave a lasting legacy. It's a story that reaches across time, reminding us that even in the earliest days of civilization, humans were seeking answers to the same existential questions. In the beginning, Gilgamesh is far from the hero he will eventually become. As a young king, his divine power has made him arrogant. He imposes his will on his people, taking what he wants and showing no regard for others. His people cry out to the gods for help, and in response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man of the forests, Gilgamesh's equal in strength, sent to humble the king. Gilgamesh and Enkidu meet and, after an intense battle, they become the best of friends. This friendship is crucial to the story. It's Enkidu's companionship that begins to soften Gilgamesh's heart, making him aware of the value of human connection and the fleeting nature of life. Together, they embark on adventures, conquering mythical beasts and even defying the gods. But then, tragedy strikes. After offending the gods by killing the bull of heaven, Enkidu is sentenced to die. His death devastates Gilgamesh, and this is where the true heart of the story unfolds. Faced with the death of his closest friend, Gilgamesh realizes that even the greatest of men, those with divine blood, are not immune to the hands of fate. For the first time, Gilgamesh feels the sting of mortality. Grief-stricken and terrified of his own death, Gilgamesh embarks on a journey to find the secret to eternal life. This is the timeless quest for immortality that echoes throughout history. From pharaohs to emperors, many powerful figures have sought ways to escape death, but none with the raw humanity of Gilgamesh. His search leads him into the wilderness, across oceans, and finally to the immortal man, Utnapishtim, who survived the Great Flood, a myth that parallels the biblical story of Noah's Ark. When Gilgamesh meets Utnapishtim, he learns that immortality is not something that can be gained by strength or will. Utnapishtim reveals that the gods gave him eternal life as a one-time gift, following the destruction of mankind by the flood. There is no secret or hidden path to immortality that Gilgamesh can claim for himself. However, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh of a plant at the bottom of the ocean that can restore youth. Determined, Gilgamesh retrieves the plant, only to have it stolen by a serpent while he rests. This loss teaches Gilgamesh that immortality, at least in the physical sense, is beyond his grasp. The serpent's theft represents the cycle of life, death, and renewal, a reminder that even nature reclaims what we try to keep forever. The final transformation of Gilgamesh is profound. He returns to Uruk, not with the prize of immortality, but with a deeper understanding of life and its meaning. Gilgamesh learns that it is not through eternal life that one achieves greatness, but through the legacy one leaves behind, the good one does, the city one builds, and the memories one creates. In the end, Gilgamesh becomes a wise ruler, no longer driven by fear of death but by the desire to create something lasting in the hearts of his people. He realizes that immortality lies not in the body but in the spirit and the impact one has on others. One fascinating element to explore is how ancient peoples like the Sumerians might have viewed their relationship with the deceased, much like how many cultures believed in contacting the spirits of their loved ones. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh does not attempt to summon Enkidu's spirit after his death, but there are echoes of the spiritual desire to reconnect with the dead. The journey to the underworld, the desire for wisdom from the afterlife, all reflect a yearning that many ancient people had, the desire to reach across the veil and connect with those who have passed. In later centuries, cults and mystics would develop specific rituals and practices to summon spirits, seeking wisdom from the deceased. Some practices, particularly in ancient Greece and Rome, were seen as gateways to communicate with the dead, asking for guidance or closure, much like Gilgamesh's journey for answers. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just a tale of adventure but a spiritual journey, a quest for understanding what it means to live a meaningful life, to love, to lose, and to face death with grace. Gilgamesh's transformation from tyrant to wise king is a reminder that, in the end, it is not power or immortality that defines us, but the legacy of love, friendship, and the positive impact we leave behind. The journey of Gilgamesh, like many stories of spirits summoning or seeking wisdom from the dead, teaches us that while death may be certain, the way we live and the love we share are what truly make us immortal. Chapter 1: The Setting of Ancient Mesopotamia. The story of the Epic of Gilgamesh begins in Sumer, one of the earliest civilizations known to humanity. Located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what is now Iraq, Sumer was a place of incredible innovation and culture. Around 3000 BCE, this land was home to bustling cities like Uruk, where Gilgamesh ruled. Sumerians were among the first to develop writing, known as cuneiform, a system of wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets. This advancement didn't just allow for the recording of trade and law but also the preservation of myth, history, and poetry. Sumerians were also pioneers in other areas, like irrigation, law, and mathematics. Their rich mythology, filled with gods and goddesses, shaped much of the culture's views on life, death, and the cosmos. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, we see these beliefs reflected, especially their thoughts on mortality and the human quest to transcend death. The Sumerians believed in an afterlife, but unlike other cultures that promised paradise, theirs was bleak, a shadowy existence in the underworld. Uruk, where Gilgamesh ruled, was one of the first major cities in human history. It was known for its impressive walls, which Gilgamesh himself is said to have built. The walls stood as a testament to the power and ingenuity of its people. Gilgamesh's role as both a king and a demigod symbolized the blending of divine favor and human strength, with rulers often seen as intermediaries between the gods and the people. Uruk was not just a political center but also a spiritual one. Temples to gods like Anu, the sky god, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war, dominated the landscape. These religious institutions were integral to life in the city, where the gods were thought to control everything from the harvest to the fate of kings. The story of the Epic of Gilgamesh almost vanished with the fall of ancient Mesopotamian civilizations. For centuries, the story was buried in the ruins of forgotten cities. It wasn't until the mid-19th century that explorers unearthed thousands of clay tablets from the library of Ashurbanipal, an ancient Assyrian king. Among these were the fragments of the Epic of Gilgamesh. These cuneiform tablets, written in the Akkadian language, told the tale of a king who sought immortality. The discovery of these texts in what is now Iraq gave modern scholars a unique glimpse into the world of ancient Sumer and Akkad. Translating the tablets was no small task, but once the story was pieced together, the themes and wisdom of this ancient epic echoed across time, resonating with people in the 19th century and beyond. The Sumerians believed that their gods were powerful and capricious beings, influencing every aspect of human life. The gods could bless crops, bring rain, and protect cities, or, in their wrath, send plagues, famine, or destruction. In Mesopotamian cosmology, the earth was surrounded by a great cosmic sea, and humans lived in a precarious balance between the forces of creation and destruction. Gilgamesh's story involves many of these deities, such as Anu, the king of the gods, and Enlil, the god of air and earth. Inanna, one of the most important goddesses in Sumerian belief, also plays a role in the story. She embodies love, fertility, and warfare, illustrating the complex and dual nature of life that the Sumerians recognized. One of the most fascinating aspects of Mesopotamian religion was their view of the afterlife. Unlike the Egyptian concept of an afterlife filled with eternal reward for the virtuous, the Sumerians had a more grim perspective. The afterlife, known as the House of Dust, was a dreary place where the dead existed in a ghostly, powerless state. This bleak vision of the afterlife made Gilgamesh's quest for immortality all the more poignant. The fear of this eternal shadow world pushed him to seek something more, a way to escape the inevitable fate that awaited all mortals. Much like other ancient civilizations, the Sumerians had elaborate creation myths that explained the origins of the world, humanity, and the gods themselves. In one of their most famous myths, the universe began in chaos, with the gods emerging to bring order. Humans were created by the gods to serve them, perform rituals, and maintain the balance of the cosmos. These creation stories played a significant role in how the Sumerians saw their place in the universe. Humans were at the mercy of the gods, striving to maintain favor and avoid the punishments of divine wrath. Chapter 2, Gilgamesh and Enkidu, A Tale of Friendship. In the city of Uruk, we meet Gilgamesh, a king of unmatched strength and wisdom, yet deeply flawed. Despite his divine heritage, being 2/3 god and 1/3 human, his behavior as a ruler is far from just. He oppresses his people, takes what he pleases, and instills fear in the hearts of those who should respect him. His arrogance knows no bounds, and it seems that no one can challenge his authority. To restore balance, the gods intervened by creating Enkidu, a wild man of the steppes, fashioned from clay and imbued with divine power. Enkidu's purpose is clear: to serve as a counterbalance to Gilgamesh's unchecked might, to humble him, and perhaps even defeat him. Raised among animals, Enkidu is a force of nature, untouched by the corruption of civilization. His presence alone represents the untamed, pure aspect of human existence, unclouded by greed or power. Their fated encounter is inevitable. When Gilgamesh hears of Enkidu's strength, a confrontation is arranged, and they engage in an epic struggle. Both are titans in their own right, evenly matched in physical prowess. But something remarkable happens. What begins as a battle between enemies transforms into the forging of a deep and lasting friendship. Enkidu's arrival is not merely to challenge Gilgamesh's strength but to provide him with something far more valuable, a companion who can share in his journey, someone who can make him reflect on his own nature. Enkidu softens Gilgamesh in a way no other person or force could. Their bond becomes one of the core relationships of the epic, symbolizing the profound impact that true friendship can have on an individual's character. Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh begins to see beyond his own desires. He learns to care for another being as deeply as he cares for himself, which starts his transformation from tyrant to a more thoughtful and self-aware leader. This friendship does more than just humanize Gilgamesh, it sets the stage for the key themes of the story. Together, they embark on adventures that test their bravery, wisdom, and loyalty. Through their joint victories and hardships, the reader witnesses the power of companionship to shape and elevate both characters. Enkidu challenges Gilgamesh not just physically but morally, forcing him to confront his limitations as a human being, despite his godly lineage. It is this friendship that prepares Gilgamesh for the profound journey that lies ahead, particularly when he is faced with the ultimate lesson of mortality. Without Enkidu, Gilgamesh would have remained the selfish king of Uruk, but their bond propels him towards a path of self-reflection and eventual wisdom. As they conquer beasts like Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, and the bull of heaven sent by the gods, the strength of their friendship only grows. Yet, the challenges they face together are not just external. The real battle takes place within Gilgamesh himself, as he begins to realize that even the mightiest of kings must face the same fate as every mortal, death. Through Enkidu's influence, Gilgamesh's view of the world shifts. The kingship, once a platform for his arrogance, becomes a position of responsibility. The camaraderie between the two transforms Gilgamesh from a ruler consumed by selfish desires into a leader capable of compassion, justice, and humility. This deep bond sets the foundation for the grief and sense of loss that will drive Gilgamesh on his later quest to defy death itself. Ultimately, their friendship stands as one of the most poignant aspects of the Epic of Gilgamesh, showing how two seemingly opposite forces, civilization and nature, king and wild man, can come together to enrich one another's lives. It is a timeless reminder of how relationships can shape our souls, challenge us to grow, and lead us toward our truest selves. Without Enkidu, Gilgamesh's story would not be one of growth, but stagnation. Their friendship becomes the catalyst that transforms Gilgamesh's journey from one of mere conquest to one of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. Chapter 3: The Heroic Adventures of Gilgamesh and Enkidu. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu first meet, their bond forms through conflict. Their initial battle turns into a deep friendship, built on mutual respect and the understanding that they are two sides of the same coin. Together, they embark on a series of heroic adventures, testing not only their physical strength but also their willpower and defiance of the gods. One of their most famous quests is the journey to the cedar forest, a place sacred to the gods and guarded by the fearsome giant, Humbaba. This quest represents their desire to achieve greatness, to leave a legacy beyond the bounds of Uruk. For Gilgamesh, slaying Humbaba is more than a physical challenge, it is a way to prove that even the divine forces of nature can be subdued by mortal hands. The journey to the cedar forest is perilous, requiring the two companions to face not only external dangers but also internal fears. Enkidu, despite his wild origins, is wary of the god's wrath and hesitant about confronting Humbaba. However, Gilgamesh, driven by ambition and the thirst for eternal glory, pushes forward. This dynamic between them shows the balance of wisdom and recklessness, as Enkidu serves as a grounding force while Gilgamesh yearns for immortality. When they finally face Humbaba, the encounter is brutal. Humbaba is not merely a physical giant, he embodies the raw power of nature, the force that no man, no matter how strong, can fully control. But with the help of the sun god, Shamash, and their combined strength, they manage to defeat the giant. As Humbaba begs for his life, Gilgamesh hesitates. Enkidu, however, encourages him to finish the job, knowing that mercy at this point would only invite future wrath from the gods. Killing Humbaba is a significant victory, but it also sets in motion a chain of events that neither Gilgamesh nor Enkidu can escape. They have defied the natural order, overstepped their bounds, and their success comes at a heavy price. It is a victory tainted with foreboding, as the gods begin to take note of their defiance. After this triumph, their next encounter is with the Bull of Heaven, sent by the goddess Ishtar as punishment for Gilgamesh's rejection of her advances. Gilgamesh's refusal to become her lover enrages her, and she demands retribution from the gods. The Bull of Heaven represents divine wrath, unleashed upon Uruk to punish Gilgamesh's arrogance. Once again, Gilgamesh and Enkidu rise to the challenge. They manage to slay the Bull of Heaven, an act that seems heroic but also reckless, as it further provokes the gods. While the people of Uruk celebrate their victory, the consequences soon follow. The gods, angered by their continuous defiance, decree that someone must pay for these transgressions. And so, they decide that Enkidu must die. This moment marks a turning point in the epic. The adventures of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, once filled with bravery and triumph, now reveal the underlying tragedy of their actions. They have gained fame, but at the cost of incurring the wrath of the gods. The death sentence placed on Enkidu is a harsh reminder that no matter how strong or courageous one may be, mortals cannot escape the will of the gods or the inevitability of death. Enkidu's death is not just a loss for Gilgamesh, it symbolizes the fragility of life and the limitations of human strength in the face of divine power. Their victories, though celebrated, ultimately lead to heartbreak and despair. For Gilgamesh, the death of his closest friend forces him to confront his own mortality, a fear that will drive the rest of his journey. Chapter 4: The Death of Enkidu, the Turning Point. The death of Enkidu stands as the pivotal moment in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the story shifts from a tale of heroism and adventure to one of profound introspection. Up until this point, Gilgamesh and Enkidu had lived without fear, conquering all challenges with youthful arrogance. However, the gods, angered by their slaying of the bull of heaven and Humbaba, decide to punish Enkidu with a slow, agonizing death. This moment is not just the loss of a friend but the beginning of Gilgamesh's awareness of his own mortality. As Enkidu lies dying, cursing the day he was born, we see his despair transform into acceptance. He dreams of the afterlife, not as a place of peace, but as a shadowy, oppressive realm where the dead live in darkness. This vision of the underworld shakes Gilgamesh to his core. Enkidu's death is not merely the loss of a companion, it represents the loss of Gilgamesh's youthful invincibility. Before this moment, Gilgamesh saw death as something distant, something that happened to others. But with Enkidu's passing, the reality of his own mortality becomes impossible to ignore. The mighty king, who once boasted of his divine strength, is now left vulnerable and powerless in the face of death. This profound grief pushes Gilgamesh into an existential crisis, a turning point that compels him to seek out a way to cheat death and achieve immortality. The weight of grief and the fear of the unknown. Gilgamesh's grief is raw and overwhelming. In his mourning, he rejects the trappings of his kingship, leaving behind the comforts of Uruk. He wanders the wilderness, wearing animal skins, refusing food, sleep, and the pleasures of life. This profound expression of sorrow shows how deeply the bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu ran. It was more than just friendship, it was a brotherhood. In losing Enkidu, Gilgamesh loses a part of himself. The loss also brings forth Gilgamesh's greatest fear, the inevitability of death. For the first time, he faces the reality that even he, a king born of divine blood, is not immune to the fate that awaits all mortals. This fear is universal. Ancient peoples, much like us today, grappled with the fear of the unknown, particularly what happens after death. The uncertainty of the afterlife, combined with the finality of death, pushes Gilgamesh to search for a way to avoid it altogether. This fear drives the next phase of his journey, a desperate quest for eternal life. His transformation from a carefree ruler into a man obsessed with his own mortality reveals how personal loss can spark profound change. Gilgamesh, once concerned only with his own glory, is now consumed with the desire to escape the fate that claimed Enkidu. Enkidu's death doesn't just shift the narrative, it reshapes Gilgamesh's entire worldview. His existential crisis is the heart of the epic. The questions that plague him are the same questions that have haunted humanity for millennia. What is the meaning of life if it ends in death? How can one live knowing that everything eventually fades? This internal struggle fuels his desire to find Utnapishtim, the only man who has been granted eternal life by the gods. Gilgamesh embarks on this perilous journey, not for adventure or conquest, but in search of answers to the ultimate questions. His quest is no longer about external feats of strength but about understanding his place in the universe and confronting the terrifying reality of his own finitude. The story of Gilgamesh's quest for immortality is not just about his fear of death, but about his desire to find meaning beyond his human limitations. It is this quest that transforms him from a mere king into a seeker of deeper truths. In his grief and fear, Gilgamesh becomes the embodiment of every person who has ever searched for purpose in a world where death is the only certainty. Chapter 5: The Quest for Immortality. When the weight of loss presses upon Gilgamesh after the death of Enkidu, he can no longer ignore the reality of his own mortality. This realization drives him on a desperate quest to find the key to eternal life. His destination, Utnapishtim, the only man granted immortality by the gods after surviving a catastrophic flood. This journey is not just about defying death but about coming face to face with the essence of life itself. Gilgamesh's journey is both physical and spiritual. He ventures to the ends of the known world, crossing desolate lands, mountains, and treacherous waters. His journey represents the human quest for meaning and purpose in the face of life's impermanence. Along the way, Gilgamesh meets several mythical figures, each symbolizing different aspects of life and wisdom. One of the first figures he encounters is Siduri, a tavern keeper who offers him crucial advice. Siduri represents a voice of reason and balance, urging Gilgamesh to embrace the life he has, rather than chase the impossible. Her message is simple yet profound: rather than striving for immortality, one should find joy in the simple pleasures of life, eating, drinking, and the love of family. However, Gilgamesh, still blinded by his grief and fear, refuses to accept her words and continues his journey. Next, he meets Urshanabi, the ferryman who guides him across the waters of death. Urshanabi's role is symbolic: he helps Gilgamesh navigate the dangerous and mysterious passage between life and death. This crossing can be seen as Gilgamesh's transition from the material world, where he seeks to conquer death, into the spiritual realm, where he must learn to accept it. Finally, Gilgamesh reaches Utnapishtim. Here, he learns that the gods granted Utnapishtim immortality as a one-time act of mercy after the flood, a disaster meant to wipe out humanity for its corruption. Utnapishtim's survival was not a reward for heroism but a rare exception, marking the futility of seeking eternal life. He explains to Gilgamesh that no human effort, no matter how great, can achieve physical immortality. Through Utnapishtim, Gilgamesh learns that death is an inescapable part of the human condition. The lesson is not to fight against it but to embrace the life we have, to live meaningfully in the time we are given. The story of the flood also serves as a reminder that the gods control the fate of men, and their decisions cannot be challenged or undone. Gilgamesh's encounter with Utnapishtim shifts his perspective. The pursuit of eternal life is no longer about prolonging his existence but about living with purpose. Though initially disheartened by the realization that even kings cannot escape death, Gilgamesh begins to understand that his legacy lies not in living forever but in how he rules his people, how he builds his city, and how he is remembered. In this chapter of Gilgamesh's journey, we see one of the earliest explorations of the idea that true immortality comes not through escaping death but through the lasting impact we have on the world. Utnapishtim's story is a warning against the arrogance of trying to defy nature, but it is also an invitation to embrace the present and find meaning in human experiences, love, friendship, and the accomplishments we leave behind. This quest, while unsuccessful in the physical sense, transforms Gilgamesh. He does not return with eternal life in his hands but with wisdom in his heart, understanding that to live fully is to accept the natural order, to cherish each moment, and to leave a positive imprint on the lives of others. Chapter 6: The Great Flood and the Lessons of Utnapishtim. As Gilgamesh continues his journey in search of immortality, he meets Utnapishtim, the only mortal who has been granted eternal life by the gods. Utnapishtim is a figure shrouded in mystery and reverence, living far beyond the reach of ordinary men. When Gilgamesh arrives, he is eager to learn the secret of how Utnapishtim achieved what every human longs for: eternal life. The story of the flood, an echo from the ancients. Utnapishtim's tale begins with the gods deciding to send a great flood to wipe out humanity, as they had grown tired of mankind's noise and chaos. This flood is not just a test of survival but a moment of divine reckoning. Utnapishtim, however, is warned by the god Ea to build a massive boat to save himself, his family, and the seeds of all living creatures. The parallels between this story and other ancient flood myths are striking, most notably the biblical story of Noah's Ark, and the Greek myth of Deucalion and Pyrrha. For the ancients, the flood represents both destruction and renewal. It's a reminder of the gods' power over life and death, the fragility of human existence, and the possibility of salvation for the worthy. The floods were seen as a way to cleanse the earth, to start anew, often reflecting humanity's need to be reborn after periods of corruption or chaos. When the floodwaters receded, Utnapishtim and his wife were rewarded with immortality, but this was not something he earned through his own merit. It was a gift from the gods, given as a one-time exception to the rules of mortality. Utnapishtim explains to Gilgamesh that immortality is not something that can be chased or taken by force. It is not within the realm of human achievement, it belongs to the gods alone. This realization is difficult for Gilgamesh to accept. He has spent his life believing that his strength and divine heritage would grant him special privileges, but now he must face the uncomfortable truth: no matter how powerful or brave he is, he cannot escape death. It is a humbling moment, one that forces Gilgamesh to confront the limits of his humanity. The story of the Great Flood resonates across many cultures because it taps into a universal human fear, the fear of being swept away, of losing everything, of facing the end without the possibility of redemption. The flood symbolizes the ultimate test of human endurance, but also the hope of rebirth. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the flood serves as a turning point in Gilgamesh's journey. It is a reminder that the quest for immortality is not about living forever, but about finding meaning in the life we have. The parallels between Utnapishtim's flood and other ancient stories suggest that these myths arose from shared human experiences. Perhaps ancient peoples witnessed devastating floods and saw in them the power of nature, the wrath of the gods, and the need for renewal. In these stories, survival is not about overpowering the forces of nature, but about yielding to them, about finding harmony with the cycles of destruction and rebirth. After hearing Utnapishtim's story, Gilgamesh realizes that his pursuit of eternal life has been misguided. Utnapishtim does not encourage him to fight death, but rather to live fully in the time he has. The gods have decreed that humans are meant to live and die, and that in accepting this truth, there is a kind of peace and wisdom. Utnapishtim's story is not just about surviving the flood, but about accepting the natural order of the universe. For Gilgamesh, this is a profound moment of growth. He has always been a man who fought against fate, who believed that he could bend the world to his will. But now, he begins to understand that true strength lies not in defiance, but in acceptance. It is not about conquering death, but about living in such a way that death loses its sting. A glimpse into the afterlife. Before Gilgamesh leaves Utnapishtim, he is given one final test, to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, as a sign of his endurance. However, Gilgamesh immediately falls asleep, proving once again his mortality. This simple act of falling asleep is a reminder that humans are bound by the laws of nature. No matter how hard we try, we cannot escape our need for rest, for food, for life's natural rhythms. When Gilgamesh awakens, he is disappointed, but Utnapishtim does offer him a small gift, a plant that can restore youth. However, even this hope is fleeting, as a serpent steals the plant while Gilgamesh is not paying attention. The serpent's theft represents the inevitability of death and the cyclical nature of life. Like the serpent shedding its skin, life is renewed, but it is not eternal. The opportunity slips away, just as time does for all of us. The flood story and Utnapishtim's journey are not just about destruction, they are about transformation. In many ways, Gilgamesh's journey mirrors this process. Just as the flood swept away the old world and made way for a new one, Gilgamesh's quest has swept away his old illusions, leaving him with a deeper understanding of life and death. By the time Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, he is no longer the same man. He has been transformed by his experiences, by the loss of Enkidu, by his encounter with Utnapishtim, and by his realization that immortality is not the answer. He now understands that the true meaning of life lies not in trying to escape death, but in living fully and leaving a lasting legacy. Utnapishtim's story is a lesson in humility and acceptance. He is not a hero who defied the gods, but a man who was spared by them. His immortality is not a reward for greatness, but a reminder of the power of the gods and the fragility of human life. For Gilgamesh, the lesson is clear: life is precious because it is fleeting. It is not immortality that gives life meaning, but the way we choose to live it. In the end, the Great Flood serves as both a symbol of destruction and a reminder of renewal. It is through accepting the inevitability of death that Gilgamesh, and all of us, can find true peace. Chapter 7, The Return to Uruk, Wisdom of Acceptance. As Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, there is a noticeable transformation in his character. He no longer seeks immortality in the literal sense but has come to a deep understanding of what it means to live a life of significance. His journey, which began in the throes of fear and grief over Enkidu's death, has now led him back home, not in defeat, but in newfound wisdom. Gilgamesh's return to Uruk is symbolic. He began his journey seeking to conquer death, but as he gazes upon the massive walls of his city, a sense of clarity washes over him. The bricks and mortar of Uruk, its grandeur, and its people are the true markers of his legacy. These physical structures, along with the governance and protection he provided, are his lasting imprint on the world. The realization strikes him that immortality does not lie in eternal life, but in the actions and accomplishments one leaves behind. His epic quest has taught him that human existence is limited by time, but it is through our creations, our contributions to society, that we become eternal. Uruk itself, with its towering walls and prosperous civilization, is a testament to his efforts as a ruler, and that is where his immortality truly resides. Acceptance of mortality. The epic is a powerful reflection of Gilgamesh's journey from denial to acceptance. His initial drive to defy death is rooted in his fear of the unknown. Losing Enkidu, his closest companion, forces him to confront the harsh reality that death spares no one, not even kings or those with divine blood. But by the end of his quest, Gilgamesh comes to accept the natural cycle of life. He sees that mortality is not a curse, but a reminder of the importance of how we spend the time we are given. This acceptance is not a defeat but a form of liberation. It allows him to embrace life more fully and focus on what truly matters, the well-being of his people and the preservation of his city. From tyrant to wise king. The Gilgamesh who returned to Uruk is no longer the reckless, selfish ruler he once was. His journey has humbled him, teaching him that power is not about ruling with an iron fist but about fostering a legacy that benefits others. He no longer seeks glory through personal conquests but through the success and prosperity of his people. This transformation is the heart of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The tyrant who once oppressed his people with no regard for their suffering has now become a wise king, whose concern is their future. His development is not just one of leadership, but of self-awareness and emotional growth. Gilgamesh has learned that to lead others, one must first understand oneself and one's place in the grand scheme of life. The importance of legacy in ancient cultures. Gilgamesh's focus on legacy echoes a universal theme present in many ancient cultures. For the Sumerians, as well as civilizations like the Egyptians and the Greeks, the idea of leaving a mark on the world was paramount. While they accepted that death was inevitable, they believed that through monumental works, whether through building cities, temples, or creating stories, they could achieve a form of immortality. For Gilgamesh, Uruk is that monument. He recognizes that while he may not live forever, the city he built will stand as a testament to his achievements. This aligns with the beliefs of many ancient rulers who commissioned grand structures, statues, and inscriptions to ensure that their names and deeds would live on long after they were gone. Wisdom beyond the quest. Gilgamesh's journey, ultimately, is about more than just the search for eternal life. It is about gaining the wisdom to understand one's place in the world and accepting the things we cannot change. His return to Uruk marks the end of his personal quest but the beginning of a greater understanding of leadership, responsibility, and mortality. Through the story, we learn that true wisdom comes not from avoiding death but from embracing the fleeting nature of life and using our time to build something meaningful. It is a message that resonates across time, as relevant today as it was in ancient Sumeria. The greatness of Gilgamesh does not come from his conquests or his strength, but from his transformation into a king who understands the value of life, the inevitability of death, and the importance of leaving a legacy that benefits future generations. The epic concludes with this message of acceptance, offering readers a profound reflection on the human condition. Chapter 8, The Legacy of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Over thousands of years, the Epic of Gilgamesh has left an indelible mark on literature, philosophy, and even religion. Though the story is ancient, its echoes can be found in works that span different ages and cultures. It isn't just a tale frozen in time, but one that has evolved, influencing countless stories that came after it. Influence on literature and storytelling. Many of the epic's themes, such as the quest for knowledge, the confrontation with death, and the search for wisdom, became staples in later literary works. Stories like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, the Bible, and Dante's Divine Comedy have traces of Gilgamesh's journey within them. The idea of a hero seeking answers to life's ultimate questions is one that transcends any one culture or time period. In more modern literature, authors have continued to draw from Gilgamesh's profound exploration of mortality. Works like Herman Melville's Moby Dick and Albert Camus' The Stranger reflect a similar existential contemplation about the meaning of life and the inevitability of death. What Gilgamesh grapples with is what we, as humans, continue to face today, questions about our place in the universe and how we confront the reality of impermanence. The philosophical impact. Philosophically, Gilgamesh's journey from arrogance to wisdom illustrates an early understanding of the human condition. His struggles are not just physical but deeply philosophical. In facing the death of his friend Enkidu, Gilgamesh is forced to confront the limitations of his own power. His quest for eternal life symbolizes the human desire to transcend these limitations, to find meaning in the face of mortality. The Greek philosopher Plato, though writing long after the epic, touched upon similar themes when he discussed the concept of the immortal soul and the philosopher's pursuit of knowledge. In fact, many ancient philosophers may have been influenced by the existential concerns first raised in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Even today, philosophers ponder the same dilemmas that Gilgamesh faced: how we should live knowing that death is inevitable, and how we make peace with the transient nature of our lives. In terms of religion, the Epic of Gilgamesh also offers insights into early beliefs about the gods, the afterlife, and human destiny. It provides one of the earliest recorded versions of the Great Flood myth, which bears a striking resemblance to the biblical story of Noah. This connection suggests that many of the world's major religious traditions may have been shaped, at least in part, by stories like Gilgamesh's. Moreover, Gilgamesh's realization that immortality is not a gift for humans, but for the gods, reflects a broader spiritual understanding that permeates many religious traditions. The epic teaches that wisdom and virtue, rather than eternal life, are the true paths to greatness. This sentiment is mirrored in various spiritual practices across the world, where living a good life and leaving a meaningful legacy are often valued over physical immortality. In the 19th century, when the tablets containing the Epic of Gilgamesh were rediscovered and translated, scholars and writers alike were stunned by its sophistication and timeless relevance. Since then, the epic has been reinterpreted in numerous ways, from plays to films and academic discussions. For instance, the existential themes of the Epic of Gilgamesh resonate deeply in today's world, where people still grapple with questions of purpose, mortality, and the search for meaning in life. As people face personal losses or existential crises, Gilgamesh's emotional journey offers solace and understanding. His search for meaning reflects our own struggles with life's uncertainties. Even contemporary political leaders and motivational speakers have referenced the epic's messages about leadership and personal growth. In many ways, Gilgamesh's transformation from a selfish ruler to a wise leader speaks to the potential for personal growth, even in positions of great power. The story of Gilgamesh is one of humanity's oldest recorded narratives, yet it continues to resonate across the ages. At its heart, it's a story about the things that make us human: love, friendship, loss, and the desire to find meaning in a world that often seems indifferent to our struggles. Gilgamesh's journey from arrogance to wisdom, from the pursuit of eternal life to acceptance of death, mirrors the journey many of us face in our own lives. His story reminds us that while we may not be able to escape death, we can find meaning in the time we have, through the relationships we build, the experiences we cherish, and the wisdom we gain along the way. In reflecting on Gilgamesh's quest, we are encouraged to explore our own paths. What legacy do we want to leave behind? How do we find purpose in a world that often feels uncertain? And how do we, like Gilgamesh, come to terms with the reality of our own mortality? These are questions that humanity has been asking for thousands of years, and will continue to ask for thousands more. As we close this exploration of the Epic of Gilgamesh, take time to reflect on your own journey. Let this ancient tale inspire you to seek wisdom, cherish your friendships, and live with purpose, knowing that the quest for meaning is one we all share. If you enjoyed this video and found the insights valuable, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. Don't forget to like the video if it resonated with you, and share it with friends or family who might benefit from these messages. Your support helps us grow and reach more people. Thank you for being part of this journey.